at the ripe old age of 30, I think now?
Yeah.
You are an elder statesman of hip-hop. You're on your 4th album. Most guys and gals in the game, as they say, make it halfway there if they're lucky.
Yeah.
So the longevity is one thing. And even before that, first album came out in 2006, you had been, experimenting with different styles, figuring out how to do it. What strikes me as really amazing about that first record, which you are referencing on this latest record, Food and Liquor, with Lupe Fiasco's Food and Liquor, a landmark album in 2006, fully formed artist. I mean, that's still the standard, I think, that a lot of people hold up for you.
Yeah.
You came out of the gate, this guy's got something on the ball. Now, just briefly, if you can explain, how do you get to that stage with that first record? Because it didn't feel like a first attempt.
Oh, that was the culmination of maybe, that's 2006. I got my first record deal in 2000, and it kind of aborted itself. I got my second record deal in 2003, and that was another aborted process. And prior to that, it was the underground, crucible, creating the artist and the ups and downs and the test kitchens and the failed recipes and putting all of the things together to become an artist, so to speak. So high school talent shows, everything in between. Learning how to be a rapper, learning how to put an album together, going through the mixtape circuit and testing and experimenting with different, the physics of rap, so to speak, and different ways to express myself, but also, growing up in it, and attaining a certain level of maturity and a certain level of sense of purpose in that period as well, so it's this artistic, kind of elevation as well as this kind of, person-man elevation as well.
Right.
So
but did you feel it was a blessing that you didn't get to, have a record out in 2001 after that first deal?
Or 2003.
No, they were all upsetting. It wasn't, there were upsets. It was definitely, because you feel, I guess it's what you spoke of before as far as longevity, you definitely feel that there's a clock on rappers, and if you don't make it by a certain time, then you become obsolete. There's a certain sense of there's a planned obsolescence within this art form, specifically rap, because it's so young, you don't see any old rappers, successful rappers. I think we're looking at Jay-Z now as kind of like, the inspiration to say, no, you can do this when you're 40. You can do this when you're 45. You can do this when you're 50.
Yeah, but he's not that good anymore.
You know it, man. You know it.
I will not get into that one there.
Chuck D is still bringing it, though.
Chuck D still makes great albums.
There's various people that you can point to that show that clock, is kind of null and void. But like I said, it's still a young art form, so it's still kind of like, I got to do it now. I got to do it now, or nobody will take me seriously when I'm 35.
Mm-hmm. Ideas Week. Let's get into the heavy stuff right away, because this album, Lupe, is absolutely extraordinary.
Thank you.
Howard Zinn.
Yeah.
All right, that is not a name people would associate as a major inspiration on hip-hop.
Yeah.
His influence looms large throughout this record. How?
Yeah. Howard Zinn, the author of People's History of the United States of America, offered up an alternative view, the poor man's view, the poor man's history of America, the average man's history of America.
Custer wasn't the hero.
Custer was not the hero. He definitely was not the hero. But he provided, a context. He provided a. I always said that, living in the hood, living in the ghetto, what would have killed me was if I had not known that downtown existed, that you can get out, so to speak, that you can go into other places. So it's the same relationship that I have with Howard, and I got a chance to work with him and meet him and participate in Voices of a People's History of the United States. He gave me a different. He allowed me, he gave me a different perspective on, you can tell this story in a different way, and it's just as credible, and it's just as real, it's just as factual, it's just as philosophical, it's just as deep as the standardized way, as the more practiced, academically accepted way, and also because of that, he got beat up for it. He took a couple ass whoopings by the press, by the government, by various amounts of people. Only later in his life he became accepted. You know, it became a part of the norm. And we're still fighting now we're literally fighting to get, you know, his book taught in schools, you know, to give to, so kids can have that, you know, that alternative perspective as well. So just in his life, in his works, you know, it became a source of inspiration for this particular record, Great American Rap.
Well, he wasn't taught in schools. He still isn't, as far as I know. So how did you come to him?
I was reached out by someone at my record label to take advantage of an opportunity to be a part of a documentary from the History Channel, which was basically, you know, celebrities reading chapters of Howard's book on stage in front of a camera, you know. And so I got to meet him and became immersed in the work because I had to perform it. And it went from there to just becoming, you know, friends with his editor and different people, and becoming completely immersed, you know, in what he was saying and just his mission, you know. And
How would your life have been different if you discovered that book at 18?
Oh man, I don't know. But it's funny because I discovered a lot of that stuff when I was in 3rd grade. You know, I discovered a lot of what he was saying. It was more of a reinforcement, you know, of stuff that my mother would have just kind of a glancing. Who is Malcolm X? Why is his picture on the wall in our house? You know, why do I live in the ghetto? You know, why don't I live in, you know, Northbrook? You know,
Where we have no stores except the food and liquor on the corner.
Indeed. So Howard gave me a understanding at 26, 27 of why that is, and a chain of events, and, you know, points in history why I, black man in America, was born in the ghetto on the west side of Chicago.
Well, this album takes the macro view. Unlike a lot of pop music, where it's kind of about today, what's going on today, and not that your album doesn't, but it definitely seems to take a wider viewpoint in the Zen tradition of how did we get here.
Indeed.
And that's not something you do kind of in a tossed-off way. This seems to be, as Jim was saying, I think kind of a product of everything you've done before. You couldn't have gotten to this place without making those 3 albums prior to.
Indeed.
So how did you get to this spot?
I always say as an artist, you know, being a vocal artist, you have to talk about something, you know. And I'm always the person that, once I exhaust a certain subject matter, you know, I never want to do the same thing twice. But what happens is, as I look back at the records and I look back at the arc of my career, it all seems, it's less about, you know, one moment and then that's it. It's more just a continuous process, you know. So I'm kind of, you know, in the midst of, you know, these 4 albums. To me, they're all the same. It's one long, continuous project. There is no separation, and it's just becoming better, you know, or becoming a better artist, you know, or becoming, how do I tell this story better, you know.
But the kid in Food and Liquor 1, the first record, is very much about that street corner. You're talking about your neighborhood and your upbringing, and now you're talking about
making Star Wars jokes and rapping about skateboarding.
Indeed,
you know.
indeed.
But this is a much broader context here, you know, where we're talking about American history in a Zen-like manner, you know.
Well, I got to travel, you know. That was one of the other parts of being a musician, a touring musician, is you travel and you see America and you see the rest of the world. So I've been everywhere except South America and mainland Asia. And in that process of seeing America in all its different formats and forces, you know, the definition of America kept changing as I would go to a different city. And it didn't fit the mold that I was told, that this is, you know, the land of the free and the home of the brave and the beautiful this and the beautiful that. I was like, no, there's some very ugly things here. You know, I never knew about Pine Ridge. What is Pine Ridge, South Dakota? You know, what is Camden, New Jersey? Why does that look like this? How is this? How do we live, if our country is so rich and so beautiful and so powerful, why do we possess one of the poorest places in the Western Hemisphere with a poverty rate and an infant mortality rate second only to Haiti?
Yeah.
You know, and to discover that, I was like, oh, that's America too, Jesus Christ. I need to make a song about that, you know, in this process. You know, so it's taking the lessons that I learned from Howard and kind of, you know, trying to mimic some of that bravery, you know, and mimic some of that, I call it Baldwinian rudeness. James Baldwin was a big force in this as well, to capture some of that rudeness and the truth.
And you're getting stick for it because they're, you know, the pushback on this record is, don't preach to us, Kanye. Don't preach to us. And
never
they're
seen
talking
the
about,
use-
you're turning into Kanye and you're telling us how to.
No. I was scanning all the reviews. I've never seen rock critics use the word hectoring more. You
Yeah.
apparently now are a hectorer.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that fucking means either.
So
You're
they-
like an easy dude to talk to. I ain't feeling
Yeah, I
hectored.
don't know. I didn't know what I didn't know what mansplaining was either. I didn't know what that meant. I've definitely seen critics go deep into the
Those goddamn critics, man, they so suck.
Yeah, you guys.
But in the same way that Kanye West took the stand on certain things and got written off, and similar things are happening here in terms of how do you address that? You're scolding us, you're finger pointing, you're preachy.
Yeah. Well, I always say this, and you have to develop these answers over time because sometimes you don't know, honestly, as an artist, because it's new. It's the first time I've heard hectoring.
Yeah.
Understand what it was. But, in me kind of thinking about that, Malcolm X was a preacher. Martin Luther King was a preacher. Jesus was a preacher. And people have no problem with them being preachers. But at the same time, too, people had one hell of a problem with them being preachers. So what side do you take? Do you take the side of the Romans? Do you take the side of the Ku Klux Klan? Do you take the side of COINTELPRO, and you say, yeah, they're preachers, and they should just be, why they got to talk to us so much? We kind of know, do you take that side, or do you take the side of the people, of their message, of what they were saying, and how deep and meaningful it was, and the risks that they took to now, after their unfortunate demises, that they are the standard of humanity. Those preachers are the standard of humanity from a religious context. And if you're an atheist, okay, then you have James Baldwin. And if you don't like black homosexuals, then okay, there's Malcolm X. And if you don't like black Muslims, okay, then here's Martin Luther King. If you don't like Martin Luther King, then here's Howard Zinn. There were these people pointing fingers, who are now the standards of what humanity is, and morality and ethics. And compassion. So hell yeah, I'm a preacher. You goddamn right.
You use the word taking risks.
Yes.
I'm gonna leave personalities out of this. It's irrelevant. The murder rate in Chicago right now is higher than that of Sao Paulo, Brazil, than Mexico City, than Kabul.
Yes.
We're closing in on 500 deaths this year.
Yes.
At the same time, we have a new sound in Chicago hip hop. It's called drill music.
Yeah.
It's nihilistic. It is the most extreme form of gangster rap we've had. You have said, I quote, "It scares me." People have said, "I'm gonna kill the motherfucker" in response. Fearless. You're saying this isn't what we should be talking about, people. We have better things in hip hop to address.
Well, I think you have to back up a little bit to whatever you want to talk about is whatever you want to talk about. I think Francis Bacon made some of the most vile paintings I've ever seen. I think that Damien Hirst, some of his paintings are just gory and brutal. I don't have a problem. Yeah, I don't have a problem with with pornography in that sense. I don't have a problem with excess of certain things, excess of violence in music, in an art form. But what I was speaking to was the culture that is behind that, the actual lie. The people who don't rap, these are the kids who just so happen to rap this and they can put it in a package for us to understand. But the majority of the people don't rap, but they carry everything that are in those raps in their minds and in their hearts, and they express themselves with actual violence, actual misogyny. These very terrible things, so to speak. So that's where my concern lies, because the music is very superficial. It's just the surface. But if you don't recognize that behind that music, that thin layer, because there's only so many, so you can count them on one hand, I'm sorry. Behind that is a very devastating tidal wave of youth violence and youth exploitation, and the product of the last 60, 70 years, of this country kind of overlooking, the ghetto for the sake of whatever.
But does it outrage you? Let me get Howard Zinn on your ass. Chicago Ideas Week, high-minded celebration of great thoughts. Soon to come, Chicago Humanities Festival.
Yeah.
These events all sell out. A lot of money is spent. Corporations sponsor them.
Yeah.
Where are the freaking hundreds of people sitting around talking about the murder rate being higher than Kabul in this city?
Well, I think that we have to be very honest with ourselves, and we have to look in the mirror to a certain extent. Why are we here? We dump all this money into these events, and this kid's dying right now. There's a kid who can't eat right now. But like you said, we have these high-minded conventions where we spend millions and millions of dollars, for the sake of what? What is the point of these ideas? What's the point of all this artsy-fartsiness? If the kids are not here and they don't hear it, right? And there's, I think that we do more from us, trying to create some type of civility about ourselves and, masturbate ourselves in our own intelligent little gatherings as kids die a few blocks from here.
Yeah.
A few miles from here. So we definitely have to look at how can we reappropriate some of the extensive finances and the red carpets of gratitude that Chase and J.P. Morgan lay out for us this evening, with that money be spent better elsewhere.
Well, following up to that, artsy-fartsy, call what you will, that's what you've made. That's the album you've made.
It is very artsy-fartsy.
And you put it out there.
Oh, it's
and
hectoring.
What kind of a voice can that hectoring voice, that voice of the preacher that's on this record, talking in this macro sense about America, what kind of effect can that have? Just the other day you told me you thought, I fear that my city is dying. I fear Chicago is dying. What kind of effect can that have on the conversation, on change, on social change, if at all?
It's funny, I bought a book here about education in the gift shop. Make sure you go to the gift shop. I bought a book called Education. And there's a chapter in there I literally just read like an hour ago. And it spoke about, I consider myself a cultural worker in the field of public pedagogy. Yeah, a cultural politician, so to speak. Whereas my part to play in this, and it's just as credible as the genuine politician, yeah, the genuine sociologist, the genuine architect of civility or what have you, is that my music within these machines, to be a part of these corporations and be a part of this process and everything else, is to start these conversations in the realm that I'm in, to bring some of these high-minded kind of things, or if you want to call those these intellectual things, or these to have the ability to tell you in a public format that I think my city is dying. So the people who read that say, what the fuck is he talking about? Chicago's not dying, is it crazy? Then I say, well, have you been to Chicago and let's say Ohio? Have you been to Madison and Kedzie? Have you been to K-Town? Have you been to Inglewood?
South of the South.
The rest of Chicago, the majority of Chicago, not just your little area, of niceness and happiness. And it gets you thinking, and I think that is my part to play. I think that is my role, and it kind of justifies, what some people can look at as being the childishness of hip hop, the childishness of what I do, the ineffectuality of what I do. But I consider myself not to be a musician or not to be a rapper. My main position is I'm a cultural worker in the field of public pedagogy.
I think it needs to be injected here for people who've been listening to you speak and may not know your music, that there is also a tremendous amount of joy on this album.
Yeah.
It is not a hectoring history lesson.
No.
There are jokes. You leaven everything with humor.
Yeah.
It's not a drag. It's not a lecture at school.
No. I think if nobody indulges in the music that deeply, if you just look at the album packaging is all black. There's no words.
You ever see Spinal Tap, by the way?
You're the third white guy.
It's an old joke, but it's a classic. You got the old black album cover, yeah.
So there's no packaging, there's no words, there's no images. The only thing that is actual in the packaging of the entire album is what I legally had to put there. So the FBI warning, the parental advisory sticker, et cetera, et cetera. But there's no words, anything else. And people say, oh, that's so dark and somber, and it relates to, you know, the darkness of America. And it's like, no, 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 no. That could be one interpretation. I don't want to, you know, belittle your interpretation. But for me, it's my first memories. I remember way back when I was still in the womb, and everything was black. I had no context. I didn't know where I was, but I had no fear of not knowing where I was. It was a known unknown, so to speak. And it was the most beautiful time in my existence. You know, this all blackness, you know, and that is why that is there. So from the
Well, and there's that part in the autobiography of Malcolm X where he riffs on the meanings of the word black that Spike Lee brought to life in the movie,
Indeed.
too. You know, it's like, why has black become bad? Black is beautiful.
black
right?
is very beautiful.
Well, now that we've emerged from the amniotic fluid, we got 27, 26 seconds, unfortunately. This conversation could go all night. But every 6 months, and sometimes you kind of raise these rumors yourself. I'm retiring. I'm getting out of here.
Yeah.
I can't take this anymore.
Yeah,
And for a while there over the summer when things were getting really heated, I really felt, because I don't know if you follow this man on Twitter, but it's an education in itself. Very transparent, very emotional, very honest. It felt like you were talk about some dark days.
Yeah.
You've quit more times than Jordan, man.
Well, you know,
So what's going on? What's the truth about that?
yeah, I am. From the commercial space, moving more into the artistic space. Hence why I bought that book, you know, to study and try and understand how to progress this art form truly as an art and less as a commercial exploit and more of a cultural, you know, kind of thing, a cultural institution. So that's what I'm pursuing. You know, and right now we're trying to build, me and a few of the fellow masters of the craft of this rap thing, are in works now to put together a guild, you know, an artist guild for the sake of the art, just for the sake of art. You know, so that is I think that's what I'm leaning to.
Wow.
You know?
Nothing like small plans.
Well, you know,
Man.
I try and be ambitious as I possibly can be, but I will, you know, I'm definitely retiring from the commercial space after my, you know, I have 2 albums after this one, the part 2 of Food and Liquor 2, and my final commercial exploit, Skulls. And then I'm off into artsy-fartsy land.
Oh, man.
I'll believe it when I see it. Thank you, Lupe Fiasco.